William Mackey Jr. History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of William Mackey Jr., Louis Ray Rivera, Amos Wilson, El-Haj Malik El-Sabaz, famed attorney Automatics, Hassan, Minister Khalid, Dr. Bay, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Sister Leola Maddox, and all the historians who gave up fame and fortune. They didn't have to go the route that they went because they believed in giving information to the global black community. So we meet here, Amos Wilson, all of them, Professor George Simmons. We meet here in honor of them. So we're going to move the camera over to the Amos collection. We have these books to help Sababu and African World Info Systems to continue the great work of Amos Wilson. We have Blueprint for Black Power, Amos's latest through Sababa, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat through the Reclamation of the African Mind, Black on Black Violence, The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in the Service of White Domination. You hear a lot of people talking about black on black violence and what we do to each other, but nobody mentions reading Amos's classic, African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order, The Falsification of African Consciousness, Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. Also, we have Issues of Manhood in Black and White. We have Confronting the Color Crisis in the African Diaspora. S.K. Damiana Quorum, Distorted Truths, The Bastardization of African Cosmology. In honor of Louis Ray Rivera, we have Jazz in Jail and Earl Ponder revealing the unspeakable Bible verses. So we have these books. Now we have a few more. Sister Carol Alexander, The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide. The Lost Jews, Last of the Ethiopian Phylloxes. In honor of Charles Hamilton Houston. The Groundwork and the Struggle for Civil Rights. We have a lot of people claiming civil rights. They did no struggle. This is Charles Hamilton Houston. In honor of Brother Harold, the transfer agreement, the untold story of the secret pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine. Found out about this book from Brother Harold. Dr. Randy Short, Slavery Mastery, the impact of religious slavery revealed. Theodore Allen, the invention of the white race. Ayo Kamati, War on the Horizon. In this book, Jews Are the Problem, World War III, COVID-19, and media censorship. Brother Ayo did an excellent job on this book. In my opinion, the only person that ever gave a hoot about the people of Georgia is Cynthia McKinney when China sneezes from the coronavirus lockdown to the global political economic crisis. Cynthia McKinney. Dr. Scott Whitaker, out of Georgia, his book, Medicine, The Causes and Solution to the Disease, Malnutrition, and the Medical Sins That Are Killing the World. Dr. Scott Whitaker, and he's going to be on Darren Muhammad's show this week, this Saturday. Also, Edward Downs, Causes Unknown, the epidemic of sudden death in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. It ain't stopped. And he used to be an analyst for BlackRock. And these two books are the Coupe de Ville The creme de la creme, aside from the great Dr. Lewis, who has said this stuff years and years ago. Dr. Joseph McCullough, The Truth About COVID-19, exposing the Great Reset, Lockdown, Vaccine Passport. And Robert Kennedy, The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy. These are books that we have. These are books that you could get, you could read, you could get the information for yourself, you could study it, and get some information on what's going on. Aside from the hard copy DVD that Dr. Lewis did that they banned, we have that too. So I'm going to name some community events that's happening for the global black community for you to listen to and get more information. Tomorrow, Thorough Black Talk. Tad, Keisha, Ashe, Sister Marcia, and Brother Black. On YouTube Live every Thursday at 8 o'clock. That's Thorough Black Talk. Also, our family out in Philly, Sister Empress Chi and the Million Women's March, every Saturday at 10:30. The telephone number is 1-319-527-6189. Sister Empress Chi and our Philadelphia family is kicking it live on a Saturday night. And you can tune in and get in on the goodies. Io Kamati on Sankofa Radio. That program, War on the Horizon, come on every Monday at 10 o'clock. Revolutionary Radio, Sankofa. AM. WSYP 95.1, Brother Anthony Mohammed. That program comes on from 10 to 11, and Io Kamati, War on the Horizon, is giving up some excellent information, so we want to salute him. Our Baltimore family, Brother Darren Muhammad, State of the City, Baltimore, comes on Wednesday, comes on Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, and also on TuneIn Radio Saturdays, on Instagram, under State of the City, Baltimore, and Glen Burnie Radio, 1590. Every Tuesday at 7 o'clock, Your Immunity Program with Dr. Aline. 7 o'clock, also on California Radio the next day. Your Immunity Project with Dr. Aline. Fridays, African Echoes in our Newark, New Jersey family. Brother Trust Graham and African Echo Study Group. They're doing the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat or the reclamation of the African mind. That's the African Echo Study Group with Brother True, Danny, and the gang out at Newark, New Jersey. Also, on Saturdays, the Know Thyself Study Group with the History Hitmen out of Asbury Park. Brother True and the gang out there, they're doing the destruction of black civilization with Chancellor Williams. And Brother True and them is really getting it on. Trust is also the mediator of that program. So that's a Saturday, Friday, and Saturday doubleheader. Today, Dr. James McIntosh had an excellent program on WBAI Minefield. He had, I think, 4 educators from the New York City school system giving some good stuff. So if you missed that program, you missed a good one. Also, that's every Wednesday on 99.5 WBAI with Dr. James McIntosh and Theodore Richardina. So you can also find out everything that Semotap organization is providing on the website Semotap. Community COP program every Tuesday at 5 o'clock on Manhattan Neighborhood Network with Brother Mike Graves, Noel Alina, and Julian Harper. That comes on Manhattan Neighborhood Network Tuesdays at 5 o'clock. Also, You can view all of the community cop programs they did all through the years on YouTube under Community Cop. If you want to view all the lectures from the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club, you can log on to YouTube and type in BK William Mackey Jr. and all our lectures will come up. You could go over them, do your research, because that's what it's about. If you don't believe anything that the speaker says, you do your own research. So we have this program to keep it intact for people to do the work. And that's what it's about. So ladies and gentlemen, we had part 1, we had part 2. Dr. Lewis says he had to come back and give up part 3 on economics and the digital currency. But as always, our good friend Dr. Lewis, who has been a big impact on the Mackey's group. And it's about information and getting the information out there.
That's right.
That's what it's about. So I want to thank our Zoom family. Give yourself a great big hand for coming out and supporting us. And I want to give the people that came out to the live presentation that's here and the brick and mortar at the Mackey's group, give yourself a big hand for coming out, because it shows that you're interested and you're looking for history, because there's a lot of things going on, but it's a lot of things that they're not telling you. So without further ado, we want to welcome noted scholar and good friend of the Mackey's History Group. Everybody give a great big hand to Dr. Arthur Lewis.
As usual, I would like to extend my appreciation to the Mackey's to the 3 lecture series and all of the individuals who come and all of the individuals who are here today, so that we can collectively work together to produce information about different subjects, so that we will have an opportunity to start doing further work in these subjects. There's so many things that we have to educate ourselves. And the purpose of the Mackey's Tutor 3 and all of the other agencies, all of the other educational venues that's out there that they mention is it is important. Each of these different entities are important because they're bringing you information that you need to know from different areas, so it makes it a little bit easier. Today we will do a presentation, we call it part 3. And as usual, we dedicate the information to the African community globally. I titled this third part, Oil, O-I-L. And it's 3 pages that we're going to go over as usual format, that we have it for those who can walk away and do further lessons on it, and you have it so that you can see the different topics. And then we also read the different pages that represent the presentation, so that the audience who cannot get the actual paper can hear what's on the form, so that they can take it, look and listen to the presentation later and do homework on it.
That's right.
So it's dedicated to African people globally. Before we read these 3 sheets, I want to preface the presentation by an observation between the African countries and the European countries. Let's say in the last year The European countries, Western European countries, England, France, Germany, you include the United States. It's just an observation that I'm going to make, but you have to judge it on your own as you read about it. European countries are trying to convince Africa not to use oil or gas in the development of their countries. Why? Because the oil and the gas, they say, produce global warming. And we wouldn't want to make global warming. So you Africans, to contribute to the fact that you don't want to add to global warming, you should not use oil or gas. So that's what you're going to hear about the global warming. So the African replied in these conferences and said to the Europeans, I mean white people, the biggest grouping, one of the two major groupings of white countries is what they call the Five Eyes. New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, and UK, or the English part of UK. Because those groups all derive from the common Germanic tribe that went into what is now called England. And each of those 5 countries are run presently by white Anglo-Saxon men. Right. And they have the commonality that each of these countries were put together by the extermination of the indigenous people. That's right. In Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, and that's how these countries come. That's what their commonality. So because they all are cousins, these 5 eyes, and because they work together to maintain and keep their ill-gotten gains. And the other part of the whites are those white people, human beings who live in what is now Western Europe. So we define, so I'm trying to define the delineation. What is he talking about? These people make up less than 4 or 5% of the global population according to statistics. So that you put the United States and white people in perspective. 5% of the world's population according to census, and they're in a negative birth rate. The 95% of the rest of the human beings are, if you want to use that term, non-white. And in the non-white category, now, so if you say 8 million people, the non-white population, the Indians, Chinese, the Africans, and others are scattered around the world, they're in a positive birth rate. So the countries that are in some of the most positive birth rate, you need 2.5 human beings born to a man and a woman. Not born to 2 men, or not born to 2 women. That don't work. So 1 woman and 1 man, before they die, has to put on earth 1.5 children. I don't know how you put a half, but they work out statistics that some of the children die. So the reason that I phrase it this way is, by nature, the most important aspect of any human race, like anything, depends upon reproduction. And the woman in any society, especially African society, without the woman, you don't have humanity. I repeat this, you can have, men and women can have all of the sex they want, and if you put a provision that you cannot have babies, the human race won't exist after 100 years. That's how important women are. And that aspect of culture is to reproduce, not one of these rich billionaires who we have in the United States, whose grandfather got off the boat in rags, but they didn't want to discuss how we got there. So that's why I prefaced it by just letting us remind ourselves the importance of who you are and your contribution that you have made to make a family or to keep it together. That's the most important thing. It has nothing to do with no mayor, the governor and all that. It's human beings who keep our family. Without men and women and family, you have nothing. So I just want to give those of us who live like that the credit for all of the reality that we're talking about in here. Before I read the 3 pages, I wanted to do a update of some of the things that are occurring. Call it current events. France. The French government sent a letter to President Ramaphosa, who's the president of South Africa, and he's the chairperson heading the next BRICS conference in South Africa. And you know the BRICS is Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa. France is asking the BRICS, they want to join. The French want to join with the Africans and the rest of those group of people. They want to get away from Europe, get away from the United States, because they see what's coming. We deal with what they call a petrodollar, where everybody is supposed to buy oil in the dollar. So currently the French is selling liquid natural gas to China in the Chinese yuan. They're not using the US dollar anymore. They don't care what the United States say. The United Arab Emirates is selling oil to the Chinese in yuan. Forget the dollar. Saudi Arabia is selling oil to China in the yuan. Saudi Arabia is selling oil to Pakistan in yuan. That's important because of, later on we'll deal with the petrodollar, and that's the foundation of the United States' economic prosperity was the petrodollar. Remember that the United States attacked Iraq because Iraq was attempting to sell its oil using the euro. They attacked Libya because Libya was working with other African countries to get an African global currency backed by gold, which will have eliminated the US dollar.
Right.
That's what's happening at this particular point. Now, I want to remind everyone that in St. Petersburg, Russia, they're having the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia, June 14th through 17th, 2023. And basically what's going to happen, the simple cause, there's 86 countries. That's your Africans, your Asians, your Central South America. 86 countries are going to meet, and they're going to work out the mechanism to put together a global currency backed by gold. No more US dollar. And what's significant is these 86 countries, primarily African, Asian, they have almost all of the natural resources, as opposed to the whites, United States and the European. Not only do they have most of the natural resources, most of the global trade that human beings do are among these countries. But yet they were forced to use the US dollar. So now they're going to sit down. They're going to figure out a global currency. And basically they're going to barter. They're going to do currency swaps. They're going to still trade. But everyone knows at any one time, if you trade with any other country and you don't want to barter, you can take what you earn and get gold from that country. The currency is going to be based not only in gold, but it's going to be based in commodities. Like Russia says, look, when the United States instigated this war against Russia, proxy war, Russia said, okay, you Europeans cannot exist. Europe has been existing and still exists. They get everything they need either from Russia, they buy it, or they were stealing us from Africa. What is that? What is it that Europe has got to get from Russia or Africa? Oil, gas, coal, uranium, food, and fertilizer. So Russia says to the Europeans, if you want any of what you used to buy from me, I'll still sell it to you, but you're going to have to pay it in rubles, no longer dollar. And nobody got rubles. Okay. So what I'm saying is, we're talking globally, what is happening among countries around the world in certain areas, in this case dealing with the currency. This global currency, because as we go through it and review, it's the global currency that kept the United States from 1944 up until the last 10 or 15 years, kept it rich. The fact that everybody had to use the dollar, and the fact that the United States would invade you if you did use the dollar. So that has disappeared. So that's the importance of the St. Petersburg. The African countries are saying, wait now, Russia's going to use that. Said, we got coal, we got nickel, we got everything. So what's going to happen is, instead of the United States and Europeans stealing out of Africa, they're going to have to come to us, Africans, if we decide to even sell it to them, and you're going to not steal it, but we're going to determine whether we either sell it to you. So the Congo would say to the United States, you want cobalt? I'll sell you cobalt. But I want you to give me gold. I'll give you the cobalt, but you can give me gold. Or you're going to give me ore. You're going to give me something, not pieces of paper. So that's the era we're moving into. So now let's read sheet 1, 2, and 3 as we get the information out. That'll give us more information to go into more detail some of the subjects that we have here. So page 1 is called oil. The second page is called oil. And the third page is oil. And it's straightforward. Page 1 here, when I read it, it'll be on my left, that column. And on the right of page 1 is some more information. This portion here is dealing with the COVID virus. This portion is dealing with some of the effects of the COVID lockdown on the U.S.'s economy. So we will read. COVID 2019 to 2022 lockdown. Part of the lockdown was because the United States' economic capitalism had collapsed. Just like it's collapsed now, it had collapsed back there, and the COVID was part of the cover-up. And what happened in the United States? They shut down, the national shutdown. Business closures, 40 million, these are U.S. statistics, 40 million people were unemployed. Of the 40 million, only 20 million got any help from federal, state, and city government. The tech industry boomed because everybody had to go online. The Federal Reserve Bank created digital printed $10 trillion and took the $10 trillion from the computer and called it quantitative easing. What quantitative easing is, you distribute the 20 million to large corporations, banks, and zombie corporations. A zombie corporation, which is about 1/3 of all the corporations in the United States, are corporations that make no profit, that they don't make enough money to even pay the interest, but they kept alive because they're part of the Boys Club. So they printed up $10 trillion, distributed to the large corporations, the banks, the zombie corporations, at 0% interest. And they don't even have to pay it back. While you went unemployed, losing your homes, you went under the thing, and that's how capitalism, they gamble. And this is what happened. This same thing happened when you had this is a shutdown on 2019, 23. It happened 3 or 4 years ago, and it happened before. Every time there's a crash in the capitalist system, every 3 to 7 years, they print up money. Okay. And that gives you high inflation and makes your dollar valueless. We're going to go to the second page here. And we're going to read it. Page 1. The commercial real estate companies' occupancy rate in the United States now is 40%. All those commercial buildings around the country, only 40% is occupied. 60% is no longer occupied as a result of everybody working at home. The commercial real estate default on their mortgage payment to the tune of, the banks are expecting $1,450 billion loss. So because they don't go to work, only 40% occupancy of all these commercial buildings, these corporations cannot afford, they're not making any money to pay the note, and they're going to default. The banks of the United States are going to take that default of $1.5 trillion. The insurance companies are going to lose tens of billions because people aren't paying insurance. 1/3 of all of the small, medium businesses will be bankrupt. So that's giving you a quick overview of the damage that the lockdown did. All the losses of people in business, but the big corporations, and they allow the big corporations to stay open, and they allow liquor stores to stay open. The middle of the page, corporations, banks, the President of the United States, and Congress, called the military-industrial complex. Those three entities, corporations, bank, the president, corporation, banks, president, and the Congress, from Reagan until now, they outsourced 50 million jobs overseas. Most initially to China. So when people ask where are the jobs, where's the skills, now you see who outsourced it. In the latest fraud, 5 million homes were foreclosed, and that fraud that was perpetuated by the banks, the mortgage lenders, and the Congress of the United States and the President offered no remedies. We go down to the lower part of here. The military-industrial congressional complex. Those three complexes, the military, congressional, the industrial, and the Congress. Those are the three. So when they send money to Ukraine, $100 billion, it stays in the United States. Most of it goes to the military-industrial complex. A certain portion, the Pentagon splits, and Congress puts in their pocket a certain portion. The universities in the United States calculate that in the war effort, that these corporations give the Congress people every year $5 billion in contribution. They split it, put it in their pockets, about 10, 15 million each. So that's where the money goes there. Okay, we can get in question and answer. We won't have to read that part. We go to page 2. We want to get these concepts out for the question and answer, and then we can expand on it. Page 2, oil. This is page 2. It's a brief history of which entities control most of the oil, the physical oil that came out of the ground, starting with, say, 1930 up to now. And they have a concept they call the Seven Sisters. From 1930, they dominated most of the global oil production. It was a jointly vertical owned, the companies were vertically constructed, so they took care of all aspects of the oil. There was a crisis in 1973, and most of the countries nationalized. Now we go to the second section. You will get the names of those seven sister oil companies from the 30s up to, let's say, 1960. They control most of the oil that was pumped out. And the names that we're going to read are names of companies that are European owned. You're going to hear. But whose oil were they taking in order to make themselves rich? So you have Anglo-Persian Seven Sisters, 1930 to let's say the last 20 years. Anglo-Persian Oil Company, UK. UK means England. They was taking Iranian and Saudi Arabian oil, stealing it with the pistol. That's how that oil company. Then you have Gulf Oil. Number 3, Royal Dutch Shell. They were stealing Indonesian oil. See, this is the remnant of that colonialization that the whites had put on the Africans, put on the Asians, and everybody else they could. Standard Oil of California. The oil comes out of primarily Mexico and Venezuela. And none of this white man's oil. This is oil that belonged to the indigenous people here. So when you see all these white faces with the oil, who now are the descendants of some individual European who got off the boat in rags. Standard Oil Company of New York. Number 5, Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, Mexican and Texas. Texas, Chevron, Texas and Mexico. So most of the oil companies, the big ones that were in the United States, they got all the oil from drilling the oil that belonged to the indigenous people, primarily in what they call the state of Texas. That's indigenous, the Mexican oil. And they went into Mexico to steal the Mexican oil. So that's the foundation. And the Dutch was colonizing and stealing from Indonesia. The English was in there on stealing Iran's oil and stealing Iraq's oil. Now we go down to the bottom of page 2. And this is the largest oil companies right now, 2023. These are technically the largest producing oil companies. Now each of the Seven Sisters are companies headed by white Europeans stealing oil from everybody else. Now things have changed. We rev up from 2030 and we come to about 2023. The largest oil company is Saudi Arabian Oil Company. The second largest is the China Petroleum Oil Company. The third is Petro China. The fourth is Exxon. The fifth is Shell. 6 is Total. Chevron is the 7th, and BP. Now, let's swing over to the last quadrant here on the page 2. This is now the names of OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Companies. This is the organization of countries that have the oil, and you will now see the people whose land it is, the Arabs, the Africans, the Asians. Now they control the oil. The Seven Sisters were stealing everybody's oil. Now we rev up now. The 80% or more of the oil is now in the hands of the indigenous people, not in the hands of these European companies. That's the concept we put in. OPEC, Organization Petroleum Exporting Company, according to the records, was created in Baghdad, Iraq. They say 1960. So as the Asians and Africans begin to get their independence, pushing out the Europeans, the oil now comes under them and they nationalize it. And now the countries that make up present-day OPEC, which controls at least 80% of the global thing. So in 1930, 80, 90% were controlled by white-headed corporations stealing everybody's oil. Now 80 and 90% are controlled by the indigenous people who live in the area. What the white people don't like is they want to come into your country and be part of the oil in your company. They don't want it to be nationalized, because usually oil that's nationalized, most of the money goes into the treasury of that country and basically is used for everybody. Not here. The oil that's pumped by white people wherever they are goes into one corporation, and that corporation in Stockholm has become super rich. Where the oil in the Arab and Asian and other countries primarily go into the treasury and is basically distributed for most of the people. Okay. The OPEC countries that now control 80%. So the 5 countries that the records show in Baghdad to put it together was Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. They're the founding members. And now the countries that sit in as a group to plan out how much oil each of them going to pump out and the strategic aspect of it, they now sit down and meet instead of the white folks doing it. See that all these oil companies, Seven Sisters, is a remnant of the theft. Now, so what are the OPEC countries? Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. This is the background. We're going to page 3. We're going to go to page 3 and we're going to read it, get the information in, and then maybe we can take a short break so that we can clarify and see how we want to talk about these subjects so it becomes clearer. This is just the part where we attempt to introduce the concept of what we're trying to do. Now, on page 3, there are 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to read for the audience the first column, and you'll see why the white European countries told Africa, don't use your gas and oil. Use only solar panels and wind. Then when you go back, there's some crazy Green Party members in Germany that thinks that you can run a country on wind and solar. Shut down their coal, shut down their nuclear. The wind and solar in Germany and other European countries produces 1 to 2% of their daily needs. It's like you going into your house or your apartment and you got 4 levels and you got 1 bulb. You think that 1 bulb will lock the house? So let's look at what gas and petroleum allows you to do. So the Africans said, well, you've been stealing the oil, and you didn't have any problem with global warming.
That's right.
Right? And you got all of the goodies, the aspect, what oil and gas bring you. And let's look at what it brings you. But they didn't want the Africans to do it because they know Africa has 65% of the world's arable land. There's 1.5 billion Africans, they say, on the continent. So if you're looking around, why do you think France wants to now join with the African and they want to join with the BRICS? You can put the United States, China, India, and Australia with a little extra oil, cut right into Africa. Africa and Russia have the greatest concentration of natural resources. Africa has the most. So let's see why the Europeans think you crazy that you can run a country, develop a country on wind and solar. 2%. Now let's look at some of the benefits of it. Energy for your automobiles, trucks, buses, railroad, farm equipment, ship, military, all branches, airplanes, rockets, heating oil, residential, commercial, electricity, in industry, aluminum, glass, steel, plastic, all forms of transportation, chemicals, plastic, solvents, asphalt. How you gonna have the oil and gas gives you the energy to make the industry work? In other words, you can't smelt glass and you can't smelt aluminum. They require a lot of energy to make the changes, and the only thing that give you that kind of powerful energy is gas and oil, solar panel. So what the Africans are saying is you took the oil, you stole the oil, you use it to build up your society, got all the benefits of a nice railroad, and airplanes, and everything like that. Now you telling us, you ask us to live in a relatively undeveloped state that you put us in. So the Russians, the Africans pretty much told the European, go to hell. France, United States, wants to make a war against China. But they can't do it alone. So they get the pact. Oh, Japan, we need you. Philippines, Australia. Now, that's not enough to challenge China. So the United States wants NATO to come into Asia water to help them contain China. They want to gang China. So the French said to China, we're not part of this scheme that the United States has. I'm not coming from Europe to put my military in the water to fight you when my country, France, trade with China. If we don't trade with China, France is gone. The French doesn't trade. There's nothing that the French need from the United States. There's nothing here to trade industrially. But China, they gotta trade. So France says, I tell China, I'm not part of this. And that's part of why Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, gets a letter from France. France is asking to be invited to BRICS. Russia, China, Brazil, South Africa, India, they're all basically non-white. They want to be part of non-white because they know where the world is going. Before we read the other one on the BRICS when we end, United States, this is the game they play. They built, these white people in control of the United States of America. Most of these rich white men, grandparents came off the boat in rags.
That's right.
And you read the thing on Trump, nothing against Trump now. You read because Trump is the so-called open racist. Which of these white people are not? At least he tell you.
That's right.
Like a southerner. Yeah. So, I kind of lost my thought for a second. Refresh me.
Trump is a racist, at least he's telling you.
Yeah, okay.
Came off the boats and rag.
Came off the
Yeah,
boat,
yeah,
rag tag.
I had. So, United States has sold everything. They make nothing. So if you had to borrow, no, not using, if we are running a country in Africa, this group, these senators, the two young ladies there said, we gotta get some railroads in here. The brothers over there said, we gotta get airports. We gotta get a drill for our oil, lay down our pipeline. Then we say, where are we gonna go? And then the other brother over there says, I wanna go to the United States. Why? Because I used to live in the United States. Okay. Now we all in this African country have to make a decision who we gonna go. What do the United States, can the United States build a railroad system in Africa? No. They can't even build it here. The United States buy railroad cars and stuff from everybody else. So we wanted to give the United States the business. They don't make railroads. They don't make a damn thing. So the world doesn't have to trade with the U.S. If U.S. shut down, the world will be better because there won't be any more wars. The last 40 wars since 1950, the United States initiated and participated in 40 wars. They're the only one to fight because they're thieves. So there's nothing that a developing African country needs from the United States. Zero. Because the United States transferred all of the industrial, all of that technology to China. Where did the Europeans get the technology? When they went into Africa and took us out, the skilled one of us and the unskilled one of us, they took us for our physical labor, how to grow rice. The Europeans don't know how to grow anything. You were brought here to grow the food. You were brought here to see the medicines. And they took your technology, the metal and what you call this garment. That's the that's the industrial revolution of Europe. In England and the rest of them is a direct result of the technology that was taken out of Africa, brought into Europe. So they brought unskilled, skilled one that why is it that most of the DC is built by African architects? So the best thing that happened to white folks in this world the last 200 years is the enslavement of African people.
That's right.
But we can't talk about that. So right now, the United States, the President of the United States, Congress, the bankers, white Anglo-Saxon men took the technology. Starting in 1900, turn of the century. If you were to line up 10 countries and you were to gauge them by how many factories they had, the development of the cities, technology, military power, the United States was number 10. There were at least 8 or 9 countries in 1900 when the United States was stealing Cuba and Puerto Rico from Spain and they first going into the Philippines. Russia, what you call Russia, Germany, France, the Netherlands, England, Portugal, India, China, and the African countries. The way they ran their society, the United States would be number 10. Those countries that we named had a bigger military, bigger economy, more technology. How does in a country that's number 10 in 1900 become number 1 50 years later? 2 world wars. Those countries, India and all, who, even though India was under the British, it was the indigenous people who did all of the technology. So, the technology that the United States got and the technology that Europe got, that built up to that high technology that the United States would, export, that was your invention. You see all the inventions African made? Your inventions. So the United States take high technology that they got, that they shipped over to China, was your technology. So you say, well, where did these white people get the technology? They stole it. So now these greedy white people who don't have a history of any kind of civilization or countries the last 100, 200, 300 years, what happened here? The cotton trade, everything else, the corporation. So you built the piers, you built the ships, you built the country. But it's the white people using capitalism who pulls everything to themselves. You got your Rockefellers and this one and this one and this one. So United States, after World War I and II, Russia, Germany, France, the rest of them, they destroyed their industrial base. Fighting over Africa. They were basically fighting over the colonies of Africa.
Right.
When they sat down in 1885, 86, in the Berlin and Brussels conference, Howard cut up Africa. And so they cut it up and they took it and each one of them developed it. So the technology that the white man, white bankers, white corporation, white Congress, and white president, they shipped the jobs out. They shipped the factories out because they wanted to make profit and didn't want to pay a certain wage to get to the American population. So they went overseas to get cheap labor. Even when they went overseas, 50% of the industries that were established in China were still owned by white people and still owned by the Chinese. So that's why the technology is no longer here. So now, with the oil, we're using oil. It's a very important commodity because it produces energy to do the things that make your life better.
Right.
Okay. So they're trying to tell the Africans, you shouldn't use the oil. But obviously, we're not going to go for that. You have a war going on in Europe. Ukraine against Russia.
That's right.
It's a proxy war. Russia is fighting against Ukraine. Ukraine is getting all of the weapons, the intelligence from the United States and the West. So it's a war against Russia, against Ukraine. And remember we had mentioned previously how we gave a list of why that area you call Russia, they call Soviet Union, why Germany tried to break in twice, World War I and II, why Napoleon tried to get in, and why in 1918, when Russia came out of the First World War, the Allied invasion of Russia. So the Europeans primarily, and the United States, have been trying to get into Russia to steal what they have. So this is a kind of continuation. We got to beat down Russia. And part of it has to do with the fact from 2010, we don't have enough time to do it. Russia had, Soviet Union had kind of broken down. Okay, let's do it this way. After World War II was ended, you had two major countries that had a big industrial base and a large army. You had the United States and you had what you call the Soviet Union, which is Russia.
Superpowers.
Okay? So United States since ending World War II, 1945, has been trying to break down Russia for two reasons: to get into the natural resources, and Russia was the only one that was strong enough to block the United States to do what it wants around the world globally. So for reasons that it's too much time to say, Russia had broken down. See, so 1945, 50, US and Russia. The 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, Russia was always there, making it difficult for the United States. Russia helped the Chinese against the United States. And Russia helped the Koreans against the Korean War. Russia helped us, the Africans, fight the liberation struggle. So the things the United States wanted to do, Russia was a block. So Russia finally broke down in 2020. And what happened was Yeltsin in Russia and the Europeans, Western Europeans, went into Russia. And they kind of raped Russia.
That's the 1990s.
It's 2020. Putin has been in 20 years.
You said Yeltsin.
Yeah. Putin comes in 2020. Before Putin comes in 2020, you have Yeltsin. That there was a 10-year period where the Soviet Union collapsed, was very weak militarily and economically, and the West was able to get in with their oligarchs and take a lot of wealth out. Putin will come in 2020.
And reestablish.
Pardon me? Yes.
And reestablish.
And reestablish it. So they don't like Putin because Putin and others stopped the theft, and they brought Russia up to a level where they could not be raped by the West. Okay? That's one of the reasons they don't like Putin. So when you see the Ukraine-Russian war, it's a continuation by the Western Europeans. Remember, the French tried to get in to Russia. The Germans went in twice.
Oh, definitely.
The Allies in 1918, you remember the Allied invasion, they went into Russia from the West. They went in. So the point is, this is a continuation because Putin had got in with others, made the country strong, stopped a lot of the theft, built it up. So the oil is very important. Before we go to the last two sections, I just want to develop this concept of the animosity against Russia. Russia here, here, here. The United States has no industrial base. The four major countries now that they say have the biggest economy is China, United States, Japan, and Germany. Okay, that's recent. In reality, industrially, they put United States number 2 behind, they put United States ahead of China in terms of the economy, but that's just what you spend. But the power, the industry, the military and stuff, it's really China 1. The Chinese industrial base is bigger than the United States and all of Europe right now. So China's 1, give the United States 2, you give Japan 3, and you give Germany 4. The white folks who shipped everything out, the world has changed, they find out that they can't compete on any level other than using the dollar and the gun. So what the United States has done, they want to, for some reason, to weaken China. Europe, Germany and Europe, most of their trade that Germany and Europe does is with China, not United States, because there's nothing to trade here. So now the white folks find they have a gun, and everybody's using their money, but they ain't got no industry, they have no juice. So because Germany is number 4, so it's China, United States, Japan, and Germany. Germany's industrial base is bigger than the United States. So in order to build back, those white people who want to build back the United States, they say we gotta weaken Germany. So what happened was, they have this war, this Ukraine-Russian war. And the United States whites say, we have to slow down Russia. We have to slow down Russia. But what I white people in the United States, want all you Europeans, Europe is the 3rd strongest industrial area. You have China, you have the United States, only because of the spending. You have Japan, and Europe is number 4. In terms of industry, the United States shouldn't even be in the top 5, because they gave everything away.
Outsource.
So what they got is you have let's put China, Japan, Europe, and Europe, and the most of Europe, a 3rd of Europe is Germany. So the real industrial areas now is China, Japan, and Europe. The United States doesn't even factor in terms of an industrial area. So the white folks says to the Europeans, we gotta fight Russia. So they start the war. Now the reason that Germany and Europe is one of the 3rd largest economic area in the world is because they're getting cheap oil and gas. So these stupid Germans, Europeans, whatever they're doing with their white folks, say, yes, we gotta break down Russia. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna deprive Russia of revenue, but by cutting off the oil and gas from Russia. Now they don't have any cheap oil and gas to run their industry. Now the Europeans, West Europeans, including Germany, they're in the recession, going into depression, because they were stupid to cut off the gas and oil that you need to run everything. So what the United States said, don't buy the oil from Russia at $1. You can buy it from the United States, but we're going to charge you 4 times. So now that they cut off, these stupid Europeans cut off their cheap oil gas from Russia where they could be competitive, they lose the competitiveness. Now you're buying liquefied gas from the United States for 5 times as much. These German Europeans let these white folks here, trick them into that. In addition to that, you're now buying oil from the United States at 5 times what you could get it from Russia. And the Congress passes a law that says any industry in Europe can come to the United States and we will subsidize you. So what they did to the European was you stupid Europeans cut off the gas and oil, they started depression, then they're doing bad, so the United States said, why don't y'all come over here and move the factories here? They're trying to reindustrialize America at Europe's expense. So now the Europeans are paying 5 times as much for the oil than they got from Russia. They're going into depression. Now the factories are being moved out. But the German people told them, we want the Russian gas and oil. So what happened? The United States blew up the pipeline.
That's right.
So now you can't get them again. They cut them off. So now what Russia is doing, the United States is doing, is trying to bring down Western Europe to build itself up. And then because they know Western Europe, most of the trade is done with China, they want to tell the Western Europe, don't do business with China. It's suicide. So they're trying to weaken Western Europe. They're trying to rebuild the United States industrial at Western Europe's expense. But France, and then the United States wants NATO to move all their military to the Pacific to help the United States fight China. So if you're European, you say, what the hell is going on here? The stupid leaders, you cut off the gas that made you strong. Then these same your friends in America, they're trying to get your industry, they're trying to de-industrialize you to benefit them. To weaken Germany, to weaken China, they want the Europeans to stop trading with China. So in other words, Europe has put itself in a depression because they listen to the United States. That's basically what happened at this point. Now they want the NATO country to now go over to the South China Sea to help the United States fight China against the war they're going to lose. France is saying, they're crazy. That's why France wants to now jump from the Europeans. Get out of, what's that, the G20. The G20. Said, let me get the hell out of here. The action is with who? BRICS. Russia, China, India, Iran, the BRICS. That's the reason why they're jumping. That's the crisis the United States is in right now. So France wants to jump.
This is fucking hilarious.
No, they got it, they think they got it all worked out. So the Africans are developing their oil and the gas. And the Africans will have whatever they want in terms of getting an industrial society so that they can let their people live good with clean water, with heating oil, with oil to run your machines. Now we go to 3. The Bretton Woods, so we're finalizing down. We're going to go through the Bretton Woods. So what happened is, when you look at, when we here in the United States of America, you have to understand, we all have to begin to understand that United States is in a critical state. It has no industrial base because they shipped it away for quick money. Nobody wants to come here. The second problem the United States has, and you will go over to Bretton Woods, they can't steal from anybody anymore. What country, right now they can't do a coup. They can't overthrow any country, they're too militarily weak. So now many of the countries from Africa and the rest of them now say, hey, we don't have to worry about when they overthrew Nkrumah or they killed Lumumba. Those days are over. Because you have strong armies. You have alliances. And now the Ukrainian war shows the world that Russia is the strongest land military force. Russia is fighting the United States and all of Western Europe. In Western Europe, the United States, they say, ran out of ammunition and stuff. So now if you're an African country, and you say, well, damn, we don't have to worry about a coup. We don't have to worry. This United States, this war has shown the world the United States is weak as hell. The other mistake the United States made was they froze $300 billion worth of Russian assets in their banks.
Right.
So the rest of the world said, look, if they do it to Russia, I'm pulling my stuff out of U.S. So now countries are beginning to withdraw their holdings here. See, these are all pieces to show you the weak position that the United States is in at this point. So many of the countries say they're pulling their reserves. So now you have a United States of America, which is deindustrialized, so therefore it can't compete against anybody on an industrial base. The people are now beginning to see you have the United States, who is militarily weak in terms of land war, and now they see you have a United States where the Chinese Navy is stronger than the United States Navy. So it's gotten to that point. So let's go to 3, and we do Bretton Woods. Because the Bretton Woods is the foundation of the US dollar being the global currency that gave the United States its prosperity in the last 60, 70, 80 years. Bretton Woods, number 3 central column. The Bretton Woods Conference was held July 1, 1944 to July 22nd, 1944. It was held in New Hampshire, United States. The title of the conference was under the auspices of the United Nations. At that point, white countries had put together the United Nations. And the whole structure of the United Nations was to dominate the Africans. So we didn't control the United Nations back then, and we don't control it now. That's why in 2014 in Bolivia, all of the non-white countries, including Russia and China, they're going to do a whole nother UN. Okay. It was titled the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. There were 730 delegates. 44 countries attended. We did a presentation on Bretton Woods. Of the 44 countries that sat down to work out the details, 44. 4 of the countries of the 44 were from Africa. One was Liberia, which was under the United States. The second country that sat down was Egypt, which was under the British. The third country that sat down, the only independent one, was Ethiopia. And the fourth country that sat there was South Africa under the whites. So the first thing you gotta say is you got 44 countries and you only had one independent Africa. Whatever came out of that, we had nothing to do with it. Only 2 countries from Europe was there. The Nationalist Party, Chiang Kai-shek, they were with the West. And technically Russia, because Russia was an Asian country at that point. Most of the conference was Europeans, England, France, so and so. And they had a lot of Caribbean countries sitting there. Cuba, Costa Rica, blah, blah. They were puppets. So the conference was called by the United States. In the United States and UK, England, they ran the whole conference. It was a conference where the United States will take over the global currency from England.
Right.
So you had a Bretton Woods conference, and the white people ran it. The Europeans ran it. No country from the South Pacific. So right now, if you go to the UN, and you see there's 195 countries. Most of the countries you see, 190, they were all colonies of these white folks. So that was the white people's conference. United States and UK. And what did they come out? They came out with an international bank, IMF. The world, anybody who wants development has to go through the IMF. IMF is headquartered in New York, and it's the white folks running it. The white Anglo-Saxon Americans running the IMF. If you want a loan to do anything, you gotta come to the white man. The IMF and the World Bank, see, the IMF gets you into debt and then switch you over to the World Bank. So the only way you could get a loan to do anything was go to IMF and World Bank. The Africans weren't going getting a loan again. There are 54 African countries. 55, but West Sahara there's a fight. 54. You want to get a loan from the white man? You do it under his terms. The Asians, all of Asia was colonized. You saw what happened to China. So if you take 35 to 1945, the Russians were fighting the Japanese. And the Asians were fighting the Japanese. The Asians defeated Japan. Japan was ready to sign a surrender. Russia was going to come down and take the United States and say, we're going to drop 2 bombs and let everybody know I'm the big guy here. In 1945, Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, they fought their civil war. 1949 and 50 they ended. Then the Korean War. Then the Indochina War. Then the Vietnamese War. Those were wars that the Asians fought to get white people out of Asia.
That's right.
And Russia helped each of them. Russia backed China, Mao Zedong. When the Korean War was over, the United States came up from the south. The North Koreans came in from the north. China and Russia backed the North Koreans. And they were supposed to have a conference to unify. The United States never let the unification. So the United States took over South Korea.
Right.
Same thing with Vietnam. After the war, before the United States got into the Vietnamese War, they had the Vietnamese War. They made an agreement that they would have a vote to unify. The United States blocked it. To give you a background, so at the Bretton Woods, out of 194 countries, there are only 44 countries there. 4 Africans, handful of European, that's a British. So we had nothing to do with it. So the IMF, World Bank, 2 banks controlled by the United States and Britain, everybody had to do it. Global diplomacy, you went through the UN. They control all the UN. And NATO, the United States, was to militarily keep you, all the non-white people, in control.
With the gun.
With the gun. That's why you had 44. So that's what came out of it. So there's a dispute. United States and the white people get together in the Security Council. They settle dispute, and they agree that we need to go in against Libya. They made the UN Security Council, white people made an agreement. We need to go in Korea. We need to go into the Congo. So the NATO and the United States military was the military force to control you Asian and you non-white people. So when you hear the word that United States and the white folks use, they call it global rules-based order. What they mean, rules-based order, means just what they say. White people will determine what's happening around the globe, and they will decide when they want to intervene that's best for them. So the world rules-based is United States and NATO going around the world determining, they're the policemen, who's going in, who's not going to go in, etc., etc. Okay? Now that the world has changed, the African, the Asian, all non-white people say, look, the world has changed. We're not going to let it be run that way. What y'all set up in 1954, 44, That was good up to the last 5 or 6, 7, 8 years because you had all the guns. You had all the control of everybody's natural resources. We were using your currency. Now we're not using your currency. We got control of our natural resources. Our guns are bigger than yours. So the United States got to back up. So the rest of the world are saying that you no longer can have a rules-based order with white people, primarily the United States and NATO, telling everybody what to do, and they decide to intervene and make all these wars on everybody. We want a global-based order based upon the UN Charter. See, the white folks wrote the UN Charter probably with other people's help in its nice fancy words. But that don't mean it. So the rest of the world, what the rest of the world is doing now is saying to hell with the rules-based order. We're going to do an international-based order based upon the rules and regulation of the UN. We're not five. The Security Council is what? The United States, England, France, China, and Russia, right? The 3 European countries, United States, England, and France, Chiang Kai-shek was with them, and Russia was say, hell with that, I'm not going along with this. Because the United States wouldn't go, Russia wouldn't go along with it. That's one of the reasons why they've been trying to knock Russia down. Because Russia helped you, they help you with your what's the word, freedom, you're fighting for your independence. Russia helped you. Russia helped the Chinese. Russia helped North Korea. So Russia was a pain in the ass, to the white people. And that's another reason why Russia, we gotta bring them down. So that's what they are talking about in St. Petersburg. We're not gonna use the US dollar anymore. We're going to run the world based upon the UN. Okay. So let's finish out the third page. So that's the Bretton Woods. What came out of the Bretton Woods was the World Bank and IMF, 2 banks that all of the world had to go to get loans. Just keep remembering now, at that time every African country was enslaved, a colony, except Ethiopia. Everyone. You had nothing to do with this one. All the Asian countries were colonized. The French had Indonesia, okay? And you know what happened in Central and South America. So you had a colonial structure run by white folks, and everybody else is down on their knees except for Russia or what the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was the only powerful enough entity to challenge the United States. And that's one of the reasons over and over again. So as we go down in the middle of the third page, they say United States never defaulted. The government never defaulted. In 1936, the United States Treasury defaulted on Treasury notes. Government defaulted. 1971, the U.S. government defaulted. Because in the Bretton Woods, the English and the Americans, they decided among themselves that instead of the British pound being the new currency, it's going to be the US dollar is the new currency. Nobody else agreed to that. So the Bretton Woods, you got the IMF, World Bank, everybody got to go to the United States. And they said, we'll let the US be the global currency, right? But it has to be backed by gold. From 1944 to 1971, the US dollar was backed by gold. It said that the countries, those European countries said, okay, we'll let you use your dollar. But for every 35 pieces of paper you print that we will use, you must have an ounce of gold to give us if I needed it. So they all agreed. But nobody ever got to verify why the United States had enough gold. We got it. Who's going to say we don't have it? didn't have no damn gold. Are you kidding? To this day, they don't show the people of gold. So the countries agreed that we'll all use the US dollar. Of course, the United States is the big guy, right? The guns and everything.
Right.
So now, remember now, when you're talking about global trade from 1945 to 1971, Africans aren't trading, they're colonies. Ain't nobody trading. The Europeans decided to do a trade agreement among themselves, stealing from everybody. So the trade agreement was for white folk. Africans, Asians, everybody else was colonized. So the Europeans said to the United States, now who wasn't at the Bretton Woods? All the countries that lost the war. Turkey wasn't there. Japan wasn't represented. Germany wasn't represented. If you lost the war, you wasn't represented. So who wasn't represented there was Italy, Germany, Japan, Turkey. They didn't work this out. Africans didn't work it out. This is purely United States and Britain. Two cousins working it out because we got a big enough gun.
Right.
And they coming out of the colonial. Remember, they got us all colonized. So they got you down. So when England and France and not Germany, England and France and US, Australia, New Zealand, that little clique,
Right.
they make up the rules of trade using your stuff. They trade in your stuff.
And robbing you at the same time.
Pardon me?
And robbing you at the same time.
Yeah. So, Russia didn't sign it. They didn't sign off on that. Because Russia said, I'm not part of this. Okay, so let's read down. So what they discovered is the United States was only supposed to, based upon the gold that they said that they had in the vault, they're only supposed to print, let's say, $1 million of paper money. Vietnamese War broke out, and the rest of it. The United States started printing more than that million. See, because the rule was, we only let you print so much paper, because if we all came back with the paper, there's supposed to be an ounce of gold to give us.
Right.
So everybody, the French, de Gaulle was the one who really caught it. He said, wait now, where you getting this money to buy all these extra resources to make a Vietnamese war? We know that there's not enough resources under your control to make this big war in Vietnam. But yet you're selling, you are issuing more paper than we know you got gold to back it. So France said, I want mine back. And then the other countries start doing it. When it got to the point where the amount of gold the United States had was they only supposed to print 1 million, they printed 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, and then giving everybody this piece of paper so they knew they couldn't redeem it. So it got to the point where countries began to bring back all these pieces of paper and they wanted gold. It wasn't no gold there. So who was it, the president?
Nixon.
Huh?
Nixon.
Nixon. He said, we don't have the gold. They defaulted. That's a default. No, the United States never defaulted. It's a lie. So they went off the gold standard. Oh no, we don't have enough gold to give you the paper. Oh, I want to see the original stash. You don't need to see. I want to see the original stash. You sure you want to see the original stash? You sure you want to see the original stash? I don't want to see the gold.
Right. That's right.
You saw them 2 bombs we dropped on Japan? You want one of those? So everybody shut their damn mouth. But from 1941, the United States defaulted, and the global trade went down. So they had to think of a way to get the countries that are doing international trade. Now remember, if you were African countries weren't doing the trade, they were colonies, most okay. So They say, how are we going to get people to use the dollar when they don't trust us? They know we don't have the gold, or they have it, but you don't want to see it, so you don't want to see it. So United States, because oil was one of the major things that is sold throughout the globe, they say if we could get most of the countries to buy oil in gold, in US dollars,
Yes.
or when we can get countries to buy wood, anytime countries trade with each other, they use the dollar. So they went to Saudi Arabia and said, look, Saudi Arabia, you're producing a large quantity of oil. If you will sell your oil, because back then people were still selling gold and stuff, they said if you could sell your oil only in dollars, because you're such a big sale, other countries will follow you. So Saudi Arabia said, okay, I'll do it. So when Saudi Arabia said you can only buy oil with dollars, before you would buy oil, you would use gold and stuff. So that's called a petrodollar. When Saudi Arabia agreed to sell the oil only for dollars, so the United States says, here's the deal. I'll give you protection. So Saudi Arabia said, what do I get out of it? I'll give you protection. Iraq, you know how the guy give you protection?
Right.
From Israel and from the other states that might want to come in and steal your oil. Okay? So Saudi Arabia said, okay, that sounds good. But this is what you have to do. You have to guarantee that you will give me a constant, unlimited supply of oil. Because remember when they had the crisis and you had to line up for the even plates and the odd plates.
Right.
Now, United States gotta have the oil because remember they expanded their military with all these bases.
All over the world.
You gotta have oil. So he said, you gotta give us a steady supply of oil, and guess how much Saudi Arabia had to sell the oil to the United States for? One guess. $4 a barrel.
Remember that paper?
You're almost giving it away.
Right.
So Saudi Arabia had to sell $4 a barrel. So now the United States has a continuous source of oil, correct? They have a continuous source of oil. Okay. At $4 a barrel. When we Americans pay for that oil, you have to take that money that you earn, you have to give it back to us for payment of the military, to house the military. You have to give it back to us to buy weapons from us to protect you. Okay? In addition to making, you have to send all that money, your money back to buy weapons, back to buy protection. But also what you have to do is, if you got any extra money, you have to buy our treasury notes. Anything excess you got, you can invest in the stock market. You can invest in U.S. treasury notes. So in other words, whatever Saudi Arabia had left over, it was recycled back to the United States. So the United States got the oil, everybody's using the dollar, and all of them trillions, hundreds of billions of dollars that Saudi Arabia should have stuck in their pocket and developed the country, it was all shunted back to the United States. So Saudi Arabia invested in the stock market, blah, 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 but they could not buy anything. That was the petrodollar. Okay? And that kept the United States economy stable. You got enough oil to make your industries got to rise now, right? Continue to rise. Plus, they said the U.S. military, they say only 40, there's 190 countries. They say only 40 countries use more oil than the U.S. military. So they had to have a good steady supply to keep all of these tanks and planes. That money made the United States militarily strong, because now they got a good source of oil to run the military. Okay. So that was the petrodollar. I summarized section 2 and 3, and we're going to wind down and end. So that petrodollar from 1974 up until now, for whatever the reason, because we have to cut it for the question, whatever the reason, China, they're giving China credit for having Saudi Arabia and Iran mend their ways. Regardless of whether they did. That means now Saudi Arabia, as we wind out, is key. Because Saudi Arabia understands that for all those years, when they went into the United States and said, well, we've been buying stock and bonds, we've been buying treasury notes, we've been buying all that, we should have about $3 trillion. After 30 years, the United States said, no, you only have 250 million. Stole all that money. With the fact that they stole all of Saudi Arabia's money, Saudi Arabia understands the world is changing. They want to industrialize. They want to build up their area. How are you going to build up your area when all your excess money is going back to sustain the United States? All that money invested in stock market, blah, 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 not only had the oil, but it kept U.S. industry going. It kept the corporations with cheap money and stuff. That generated United States' economy. To end it, Saudi Arabia, they see the world is changing. They see that, they said, wait now, we're never going to go any place dealing with these white folks. So who's the uprising power? Asians and Africans. China's got the biggest industry, Russia's got the strongest military, Africa has everything you need. So Saudi Arabia wants to build up Saudi Arabia. Who's going to build it up? U.S.? U.S. won't even maintain the streets. So the only country that's big enough and geared up enough to begin to build quickly is China. Infrastructure. Saudi Arabia, you don't want to buy any more U.S. weapons. Because my brother Muhammad would always tell me, they sell you the weapons and won't sell you the spare parts and bullets. So they know they can't go back to the United States for weapons. So who's Saudi Arabia going to get the weapons to protect them from? Russia. So now you drop in the U.S., you're going to get the weapons from Russia primarily, because they got the best. So how many hundreds of billions of dollars that United States is not going to get from Saudi Arabia? So they're going to lose that. So they're going to lose the hundreds of billions that they used to give U.S. for the thing. Russia's going to get it. The money that they were forced to invest in U.S. Treasury notes and all of that junk, no more. Because China now is the biggest oil customer. Hell with the dollar. We're going to trade with Chinese yuan. So with that dollar, that where most of the people had to use the dollar for everything, is down to less than 15%. You went from 95 down to 50. And the dollar is gone. So and not only that, that money that Saudi Arabia had to give to buy worthless U.S. stock, bonds, all that nonsense. You know where they're investing it now? They joined the BRICS Bank. So all of them hundreds of billions of dollars. The BRICS Bank is Russia, Brazil, China, India, and South Africa. They have about $30 billion. They're going to use 20% of it that the rest of the world can come and tap in to that bank money.
Right.
When they tap in, the interest rate is low. And they can pay in their own currency. Look at what they were doing by the African ambassadors saying. When you wanted to get a loan from the IMF and World Bank, you've given you at 30% interest. You got to pay it back with all kinds of stipulations. In the same time, you're giving white countries 0% interest. The white countries are defaulting, the African countries never default. So do you want to be now an African country? Now they're bringing in the Caribbean. Who would you, if we want to develop, we got everything. You want to deal with the crooked IMF and World Bank? Now you go to the BRICS Bank, get the loan for 2 or 3%, take your time to pay,
And build up.
and then you could say, okay, I'll give you some cobalt. You never get in debt. So that whole debt trap that the Europeans had using British money, the euro, the French franc, the US dollar, that trap, the same trap that got us all in them. High mortgage rate, high interest rate, high cognizance, they squeezing you to death. So so can you imagine if Saudi Arabia shipped a couple of $100 billion that used to go to sustain US's economy, military, stock and bonds, is going to shift to the bank. So now they're African and Asian. So that's going to solidify the African and Asian more to themselves. So the whole world has shifted. And I'm going to end with the presentation here from one of the white men, one of the few I've ever heard. He's in one of the blogs, McGovern. He's saying, to put it clear, that's clear. Most of these white people, they don't want to deal with reality. And some crazy people like Obama and the rest of them, you take the money. He's not a bad fellow. He took the money. Malcolm didn't take it, and 101 of us wouldn't take it. You got those who take it. They look for those who take it. So, McGovern, yes. Sometimes about 6 things going ahead, I don't know which to order. He said, it's no longer a monopole, meaning the United States and Western Europe, they go around telling everybody what to do. That's over. He says, people say it's going to be a multipolar. A multipolar means Russia, you run this area, China, you run this area, Africa runs their area, everybody running their area with their own stuff so that you get maximum development, right? McGovern says, that's the way the world is actually going now. McGovern says, it's a bipolar world. On one pole is the lily white countries and the America and the lily white countries. And on the other pole, it's the non-white countries that make up 90%. And he said China, Brazil, India, the Arabs and the Africans. That's the other pole. It's the United States, the white people are in their clique. Remember the capitalists,
right.
the what they call this, the people who conquered you, the enslavers, they killed down your people, rape your women. It's all come back. So what he put it was, he said now it's going to be a white world, little polar white world, lily white world, and the rest of them. He said, you know what you have in common? They're all people of color, and they all suffered the racism, colonialism from that lily white. Makes it clear. So I end the presentation there just to try to crystallize what this whole, the global part is about. And remember, they mistreat us, African people and people of color, the way we've been mistreated inside the United States, inside Britain, the same treatment you get outside. As Malcolm said, the foreign and the domestic policy is equal. So we end it here. Question and answer. Then you can do
Everybody give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. Okay. We're going to start the first question and answer from the Zoom audience. Anybody from the Zoom audience have a question for Dr. Lewis? Zoom audience. Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. From the floor.
Let them talk.
Anybody from the floor has a question for Doc?
Question or comment?
Yeah, when did what year did America outlaw American citizens from having gold other than jewelry?
I can't give you the exact date, but it was in the 30s, I think 1933 or something like that.
That's when they had people turning it back.
You made it illegal because they knew. Now when I say they, I'm talking white Anglo-Saxon
Right.
business people. They ain't talking about America.
Right.
They knew that Britain was down, right? And so they wanted, and they knew that the rest of the world, whoever was remember, see the world at that point they were using British pounds, and they were using British pounds and silver. So the world was kind of used to using metals, silver and gold, as backup currency.
Right.
So the United States knew that if the going in, that was 1933, 34.
Right.
That as they knew the way the world at the end of the world would come, they structured it so that they would have to, instead of the British pound being the global trade, we're gonna let our US dollars be the global trade. But the rest of the world isn't gonna go for us using our paper money as backup. The rest of the world was used to using currency that had gold or silver as a back. So the United States knew they had to have gold at the conference. They used to leave it when they lied about it. That use my money. Then people say, what you backing it with? It's got to be gold. That's why they start taking the gold from you
Right.
to get it. If you look up who has gold, you'll see a lot of European countries, the top countries that have gold, European countries. Europe don't have gold. So where do European countries get it from? All of the theft that they took around the world, right? Mainly from Africa. During the Opium War, the Spanish was dealing with the Chinese, for wood, porcelain, all of that. They used silver. The Chinese took silver and gave them the furniture and goods because where were the Spanish getting from? They were stealing the silver from the Caribbean and African-based people. The Europeans didn't have anything. The Europeans come to China and they want wood, they want furniture, porcelain, and all that. They got nothing. China said, give me some silver. I ain't got no silver. Well, what do you got? Well, I'm gonna do the opium on you. You see, so I don't know the exact date. You can look up the exact
It was during the FDR years.
Yeah. Huh?
Force.
Yeah, it was illegal
Forced it.
to get gold, so they put it all and have the reserve so that when they sat down, they could say to the people, US should be the one, US dollar should be the reserve of gold, no longer British. Why? Because I got more gold. Britain has nothing behind. Britain was bankrupt. In World War I, the United States helped Britain. Britain had to pay their cousins, the US, in gold. All the gold they had been stealing. So the United States got that gold. During World War II, after the United States helped Britain, they didn't have any more gold. So that's when the United States said to Britain, colonial preference.
Exactly.
You ain't got no more gold, but you give me a cut of Nigeria, and that's where the colonial preference
That's
came.
gangster.
Yeah, that's how the United States got in Africa. The English had to give them a piece of the action of the colonies. Okay, so that's basically what it is. The same way that the countries in 1971 knew the United States was printing too much paper. They bought. United States couldn't give the people, when they started returning the pieces of paper, they didn't have enough gold. They went off in 1971, then they went to the petrodollar. Now you have a point where 86 countries they're structuring a whole new global trade. Remember, these 86 countries do not have to trade with the United States. The United States can be on the moon and nobody will miss it. So really, they're talking about trading among themselves. Who's there? The African, the Asian, everybody's there but white people. And then the white people are looking and they say, well, damn, these countries are going to do normal trade. They're going to do currency swap. They're going to do this and this. But they now know, when you sit at the table, China says, here's my gold. Russia says, here's my gold. Everybody's put up their gold. Now, many African countries may not have gold, but you got cobalt, you got nickel. So the African, it's commodities. You want to know when I buy something something from you. You make me a suit. And I give you a pair of shoes. But if you don't want a pair of shoes, you want to give me back that paper, I gotta have some gold, some copper, some aluminum. I gotta have something to give you real. Right. It's back to the same bartering system.
Uganda and Ghana has gold.
Everybody, most African, who was it? Museveni, who's in
Uganda.
He said he discovered a gold field in the hundreds of millions.
Miles.
I know those Europeans said, damn, wish we could get in there. You ain't getting in there. People got the gun. Zimbabwe, lithium. They got a lot of lithium. They work with China, so China said, give me the lithium. Now Zimbabwe said, wait, no, you ain't getting no more lithium. I'm going to process the lithium up to this point. So instead of you getting it for $1 a ton, you're going to pay $50 a ton because I'm going to process the value added. So all of that's coming. The United States and Europe, France wants to join the Asians and Africans. Right. So you know the European, the French know better than I, they almost collapsed. France has 51 nuclear plants. They say half of them are not working because they're old. So they got the other half. They only can use 20. But because the drought, there's such a drought, they can't use a lot of the remaining 26 because you need water to cool it. And then the uranium that is used in the nuclear plant, everybody's buying it from Russia. So France they said, what are we going to do? We're losing our African colonies. They don't use our money anymore. We try to sanction Russia. And then now we got no cheap gas. So you lose your cheap gas to make things. You lose your 90% of France is nuclear. But half the plants are out. Because they need repair. The other half, some of them you can't use, there's enough water, so they're in a terrible fix. They're asking to join BRICS. If you Africans will save us, it's like Dr. Ben would say, all the Europeans and everybody Asian came to you, I will suck at your feet, just civilize me. They're coming back.
That's the fourth time.
Okay. Brother Imhotep, you have a question for Doc?
I think you got one mute.
Zoom audience, question for
Great lecture, Dr. Lewis. This is Imhotep from Detroit.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Dr. Baby.
You think I don't know who you are? I'm listening. I know Imhotep.
So he's just up here in Harlem.
Yeah, I know who he is. What's the question? You had a question or whatever you want to say?
No, it's from Detroit.
Okay. I know who you are with Brother Blunt.
Right, let's go to
Yeah.
Okay. So just a second, the question, yeah.
Okay, so,
What statement? Just a second and don't tell.
no, I got a question. You said the Gulf found out what the deal was with the fact that they didn't have gold. Is there any relation to that heroin drug trade that was going on in the African American community to sort of buttress the Vietnam finances?
What you do is you go on the internet. You go on the internet and you put in what is that British paper? The Guardian.
Yeah.
And you say drug trade, large banks.
Well, they might say which one, but.
No, there's one. You're right. No, there's one particular article that they still keep on the internet from the Guardian. The Guardian wrote, said they took a UN study. The UN's about 10 years or 12 years old. The UN claims they documented that the big banks, that's talking US and British, during 10 years ago, that they could find, they took in $350 billion from the drug traffickers. And they said that $350 billion saved the economy. So we have to, let's put it this way. That's what the Guardian said, I didn't say it.
Well, America will admit that Miami was built up by drug money.
Right. So let's look at it this way. That drug money. So what? Here's a bank in New York, a big bank, Bank of Oshkosh. They opened the government told them you open a branch. U.S. government told the big banks you open a branch in the Bahamas, and the drug money comes into your branch, and you do it. In other words, drug money. The heroin, which came from remember this? The drug money. Remember the two opium wars? Remember, but the two opium wars, right? The English went against China in the first opium war. The English, the French, and U.S. That drug, they said the poppy came primarily from Bengal, India. That's the quote modern or contemporary root of the global heroin trade. So you know they used to take it from Vietnam.
Right.
Then Bengal went back to China, and now they're getting it out of Afghanistan. Then you know the drug, the heroin, the poppy, comes through Turkey. I don't know if Turkey changed it, but it goes from there to Europe. Distributed in Europe, with 95% of heroin.
Right, it used to go through France.
Yeah, different. Okay, it goes through Europe. They get their cut. The banks get their cut, and then it's shipped off to the United States. United States get there. So they're documenting that the drug money plays an integral part to stabilize the banks. That's what they're saying. I think it's Vanderbilt, one of them. That's where they get much of the money from.
Okay, Zoom audience, question? Okay, last question from the floor, Lady B.
9/11, wasn't that heist, U.S. heist of the gold, $100 million in gold?
So what do you mean 9/11? Well, anything is possible. But the 9/11, what do you think? Why do you think somebody did the 9/11? And it wasn't the Arabs, it wasn't no people. You know,
Homegrown, not the
yeah. So you know, the government did it, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. They said, how you know? The firemen said they heard the bombs go off. But you see what 9/11 was. So you look globally. What did they use that as an excuse to say? Bin Laden did it?
Come on, a building went down that wasn't even touched.
Of course. Then they say Bin Laden did it. And now that Bin Laden did it, and Bin Laden is in Afghanistan, we have to go and get him. No, it couldn't be that they wanted to invade Afghanistan first so they can get $3 trillion of your taxpayers' money.
Well, that was drug money, because why did they go to Iraq if he was in Afghanistan? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. So you know, they went there. First of all, you use up $3 trillion of your tax money. Then as it is said here, then the opium got that.
Yeah, the oil from Iraq and Kuwait.
It's the opium and the drug money and the U.S. taxpayers' money. So we don't know how many billion. So if they say that the economist says that the military-industrial complex took $3 trillion of your tax money, so they stick it here, and then whatever the drugs, stick it here, and you don't know how many minerals and lithium and they've been shipping out. Why they stay 10, 20 years?
Get that money.
Get that, to justify taking your tax dollars, to get the heroin, the poppy in here, and to get as much mineral left. When they invaded, what's his name? Gaddafi. Killed him, stole, what they say, 46 tons of gold, 46 tons of silver, they raped the country.
Metric tons.
That's right.
They rape that's how they do
That
it.
was Brother Obama.
We all have trades. And Dr. Benoit said every race have trades. And you got people who want the money. You think Obama was the only black man in all of the universities that they had groomed? Or like they can groom who they want, they select you, okay, he'll do it, he'll buy you.
Powell. Yeah.
Most people will do it. Most black people will do it. Will sell out for money.
As you can see in hip hop.
Okay.
More white folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. Zoom audience, give yourself a great big hand. We want to thank you for participating in this week's William Mackey Jr. History Club. The lecture will be on YouTube. The lecture will be on YouTube tomorrow after about 3, 4